NFL free agency is only a few short weeks away, and we've got some big names hitting the free agent market. Here's where I think these players will be playing in 2024. Now let's start at wide receiver, and already the biggest name at wide receiver is no longer a free agent, as the Cincinnati Bengals let T. Higgins know they were going to franchise tag him. So he's already off the market. But there's other big-time wide receivers that are going to be hitting the market. And let's start with Mike Evans of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just keeps putting up 1,000 yards, a bunch of touchdowns, great season after great season. I think he's going to be back with Tampa Bay. I know it's not very exciting, but when you look at it, he's over 30 years old. He's been with this organization his whole career. A, are they going to want to let a guy like him walk? And B, is there a team out there really that wants to invest heavily in a wide receiver at his age who's never played in their system? I just don't think so. I think when it's all said and done, he's going to be back in Tampa Bay. The other big-time wide receiver that's about to hit the free agent market is Michael Pittman Jr. Now, this is a different situation for Mike Evans. He's entering the prime of his career. You should feel good. Any team that signs him should feel good. He's going to play out the entire contract you sign him to. He's a great player. He's put up great numbers with terrible quarterbacks like Carson Wentz, Gardner Minshew, Matt Ryan, and his noodle arm, and he's still produced. So he's definitely going to be one of the most coveted wide receiver free agents. But I'm going to be boring here, and I'm going to say the Colts franchise tag him, and they work out an extension with him. Because as much as any team that needs a wide receiver would like Michael Pittman, the Colts would like Michael Pittman too, especially for their second-year quarterback, Anthony Richardson. So I know I've been boring with the first two picks, having them stay with their teams, but it's about to get spicy, and it starts with Saquon Barkley, arguably the best running back free agent this year, one of the best running backs in the game, still a very talented player, still only 27 years old. I know that's getting up there for running backs, but it's not the kiss of death. Teams aren't going to be scared off by him. And I think one team that definitely won't be scared off by him is the Chargers with new head coach Jim Harbaugh. We know Jim Harbaugh, he wants to come in and start winning now. And we know he likes to run the football. He wants a workhorse running back who can do it all. That is Saquon Barkley. I think the Chargers take the plunge, sign Saquon Barkley. Let's not forget they're probably going to cut Mike Williams, which is going to save a ton of cap space. They may not bring back Keenan Allen. They're going to have plenty of cap room. I think they make a move for Saquon. Another big-name running back that's set to hit free agency is Josh Jacobs. After getting the franchise tag last year, it's very unlikely the Raiders are going to franchise tag him again, and I don't even think the Raiders are going to bring him back, to be honest. I think that ship has sailed. I think we see him on a new team next year, and I think it's the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's a great fit for the Baltimore Ravens. I know everybody wants Derrick Henry to go there, but I think Josh Jacobs fits this offense better, what he can do in the passing game. And he's a younger player, so you don't have to worry as much about a guy like Derrick Henry, maybe just a one-year rental. Josh Jacobs is a guy you can feel fairly good about if you're the Ravens for at least a couple more years, if not longer. So I think Josh Jacobs lands with the Ravens and gives that team a boost in the running game that they need. Now, speaking of Derrick Henry, he's also a free agent this year. Said his goodbyes to Tennessee. I doubt they're going to bring him back. New head coach there. They got to rebuild. They got to get younger. But you know what team is willing to take on a guy like Derrick Henry? It's Jerry's world, right? The Dallas Cowboys. This feels like a Jerry Jones move if there ever has been one. A big name running back like Derrick Henry, a bulldozing running back. This was something the Cowboys really did not have on offense last year. They did not have that guy that could get the short yardage, tough yards. Tony Pollard just couldn't do it. I think they go out, they sign Derrick Henry. Jerry Jones isn't afraid of Derrick Henry's age. He's not afraid. He'll see that name, put Derrick Henry under the bright lights in Cowboys Stadium. I think that's where he's playing next year. And now if that happens, that means Tony Pollard is on the market. And I think he's going to be on the market. Again, he was a guy that got franchise tagged last year. It didn't really work out the way the Cowboys had hoped. He wasn't necessarily that good in real life or in fantasy. He was okay, but not what they were looking for. But I could see him landing with one of their division rivals, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles have been looking for a running back they can trust for years now. They signed DeAndre Swift to a one-year deal last year, and at first he looked really good, kind of faded down the stretch. They see Tony Pollard twice a year. They know what this guy can do. I think if he hits the free agent market, they could potentially go out and sign him to a 1-2-year deal, not too expensive there, and bring him in and finally have a guy who gives them that explosive ability out in space. Remember, the Eagles aren't a team that needs a bruising type running back. They're better off with a running back who's good out in space. That is Tony Pollard. I could see the Eagles snatching him up if he hits free agency. Let's go back to wide receiver, and Calvin Ridley is probably going to hit free agency this year because if the Jaguars sign him to an extension, they owe the Falcons a second-round pick. Don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going to hit free agency, but I'm going to be boring again, and I'm going to say he's back with the Jaguars. I don't think there's a lot of teams out there who saw Calvin Ridley last year and are like tripping over themselves to go sign him. So I think he probably takes a medium-ish kind of deal to stay with the Jaguars. Let's also not forget he's 29. So does a team really want to invest heavily on a guy who didn't look that good last year anyways? I don't think so. I think, boringly, he returns to the Jaguars. Back to running back now, and if Jim Harbaugh is going to go get his guy, Saquon Barkley, that means Austin Ekeler is going to be on the free agent market, and this is a guy I could see the Raiders investing in. Remember, the Raiders know Austin Ekeler. They play him every year, and I think he'd be a perfect complement to Zamir White. I think Antonio Pierce would look at him and say, hey, maybe he doesn't have much juice left. Maybe he can't get it done running the football between the tackles, but as a pass-catching back, he can complement Zamir White, and I think the Raiders take a chance on him on a pretty, good, team-friendly type deal. So I think we're going to see Austin Ekeler in the silver and black next year. And, of course, if the Eagles do go out and sign Tony Pollard, that means DeAndre Swift is back on the free agent market. I think we're going to see him on the market, and I think he's going to go to a division rival, and that's the New York Giants. They're going to need to replace Saquon Barkley. They're not going to want to invest too heavily in running back. He's still young. He's only 25 years old. Remember, just coming off his rookie contract. The Giants have a pretty young team, a pretty young nucleus. I think they signed him to a relatively cheap 1-year prove-it type of deal. So a lot of shuffling in the NFC East, but I think we see it, and DeAndre Swift is a giant in 2024. Now, another wide receiver that I think a lot of NFL teams will covet is Marquise Brown. He's still pretty young. He's a dynamic player. You should feel pretty good that if you sign him to like a 3-4-year deal, you're going to get the full contract. He's going to play it out. And a team that I think really needs a wide receiver and is willing to do it would be the Tennessee Titans. I just talked about how they need to get younger. Last year, they tried to run it back with Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and they brought in dusty old DeAndre Hopkins. That's done. They brought in new head coach Brian Callahan. They need to get this roster younger. They need to get some more dynamic players in there. Hollywood Brown fits this perfectly. It wouldn't necessarily be great for his fantasy value, but I think it's great for the Titans, and they're going to go out and try to make a splash at wide receiver. Now, I don't want to ignore tight end and quarterback, but there's not a lot of big name free agents here. But the biggest name at free agent for tight end is probably Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans, and I think he's just back in Houston. I mean, why not? He signed a 1-year deal last year. When he was healthy, he was good. Why wouldn't they just bring him back on another cheap 1-2-year deal? I think we see it. Keep that weapon for CJ Stroud. Keep this offense intact. So I'm going to be boring here and say Dalton Schultz returns to the Texans. Now at QB, there's Kirk Cousins, and I think we see Kirk Cousins leave Minnesota. I just don't know if he feels necessarily appreciated there. I don't know if they're willing to shell out the money that Kirk Cousins is going to want, but I think a team that will are the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are not far off from being a playoff team. You look at this offense, we know Kyle Pitts, we know Drake London, we know Bijan Robinson. They have young pieces on defense as well. This is a playoff team, except they need a quarterback, and Kirk Cousins gives them that. Not only would this be great for the Falcons, it would be great for fantasy for this entire offense. I think the Falcons do it. They go out, they sign Kirk Cousins, and then they use the number 8 pick on an offensive lineman or an edge rusher, whatever they feel best about there, and propel themselves into a playoff team. And then finally, I hate that I have to mention Gabe Davis, but Gabe Davis is one of these players that fantasy football players just cannot let go of. It doesn't matter how many years he plays, how bad he is year after year, they won't be able to let go, and they especially won't be able to let go when he signs with the Kansas City Chiefs. This is such a Kansas City Chiefs move, right? He's torched them in the playoffs before. They've seen him. They've seen what he can do. This just screams KC Chiefs move. Let's go sign a subpar wide receiver who's basically a better blocking Marquez Valdez-Scantling and maybe a better pass catcher, but can't really do much more than MVS can do, and pay him money because this is the answer. I mean, it probably won't matter. The Chiefs will probably still win the Super Bowl, but this feels like such a Chiefs move, and it also feels like a move where fantasy football players are going to trip over themselves to draft Gabe Davis in round 3, in round 4, and get burned once again. So that's where I think these free agents will be playing in 2024. If you want to see some wide receivers I think are ready to break out this year and help win fantasy championships, check out this video right here.